3 weeks after Marin went to chains, Harven Crane rode through the gate. He had always come like this, early, unannounced, and laughing. He was Aldric's oldest friend. He had been there for all of it. He knew where every body was buried. They all did, in those years. They fought in the training yard the way old friends fight. Without rules, without mercy, without the need to be impressive. They had been doing this since before the wars. Seraphine was at the upper window when he arrived. She saw him cross the courtyard below. Something passed across her face. She made it stop. Harven held Lyra at dinner with tremendous care. The care of a man holding something that belongs to someone else. Lyra, being 5, noticed only that he had warm hands. Cale sat across from him and watched. He could not have named what he was watching for. He was his father's son. At table that evening they were easy together. Old friends, a family, firelight and good wine. It looked like the life you build wars to protect. Most of it was real. They crossed paths once in the corridor. He said her name. She said, "You look well." Then she was gone. From the high gallery Aldric watched the courtyard below. He had a cup of something cold. He watched for a long time. He was at his desk past midnight when he found it. Not the conspiracy letters, those were done. This one had been folded small, the way people fold things they mean to keep. It was old. He read it once. He read it again. He folded it. He set it on the table. He was very still. The candle burned down without his noticing. Dawn came and he was on the ramparts. He had not slept. He watched the sun come up the way you watch things you cannot stop. He went to Lyra's room. He stood in the doorway. He looked at her sleeping face for a long time. He was looking for something specific. He went to Seraphine. She was asleep. He stood in the open doorway and did not go in. At the morning council he was perfect. He had always been perfect at this. Not one thing showed. He spoke with the archivist that afternoon. Records. Dates. Places. He was very precise about what he needed. He asked the question of the woman who had been there 5 years ago. She gave him the answer he already had. He thanked her and told her to forget the question. He rode out alone in the late afternoon. There is no counsel for what he was carrying. Cold air and open land were all he trusted. When he returned, he sent for Harven. A written summons, not a call from the doorway. Harven felt the formality and said nothing about it. They ate together. Old stories. Old wine. Harven laughed a great deal. Aldric was warm and gave nothing away. Harven talked about the Selwyn campaign. The winter they had marched on nothing. The strange hilarity of men who have used everything up. Aldric asked about Avonmore. The treaty year, how long before the signing? Harven's answer was 2 weeks shorter than the truth. There was a northern inspection that needed doing. Aldric mentioned it the way you mention things you have been planning for weeks. Harven agreed to ride along. Seraphine was told that evening. She listened. She looked at Aldric's hands when he spoke, and then she looked away. He looked in on Lyra before bed. She was deep in the sleep of children who have never been broken. The absolute sleep, the unguarded kind. He went to Seraphine. He held her. She settled against him without hesitation, the way you do with someone safe. He thought, this is the last time it will feel like this. They rode north before dawn. 8 men at the gate. Then 4. Then just the 2 of them, which was what Aldric had planned. The northern country in early spring was grey and wide and cold. They rode without hurry. The silences between them had 30 years of history in them. Harven mistook them for something comfortable. They stopped at the Veran Crossing. They had forded this river in the 3rd winter of the war. 2 young men then, certain they would die before spring. The water looked exactly the same. Harven spoke about that winter. He remembered everything, the cold, the decisions, the strange hilarity of survival. He was still the best storyteller Aldric had ever known. Aldric listened. Then Aldric said, I know about Avonmore. He meant, I know about all of it. Harven understood him perfectly. Harven went still. His horse went still with him. That is what absolute knowledge does to a man. It stops him completely. He did not deny it. He had carried it for 5 years. He had always known, underneath everything, that one day this conversation would come. He asked, what happens now? He meant, what do you want from me? He meant, I will give you anything. Aldric said, nothing. Quietly. The way he said everything that was final. He said, let us ride on. They rode. Harven believed him for 12 minutes. He had always been slower than Aldric at this kind of calculation. That was the difference between them. The ridge above the Veran Valley was wide and cold. The grass moved in the wind. The sky held no color worth naming. The horses stood in the long grass on the ridge. The valley below was empty. The sky above was empty. The wind moved through everything. He rode south. There was nothing waiting that required speed. He rode at a walk for a long time. He stopped at the Veran Crossing. He knelt at the water's edge. He was there long enough for his knees to go cold. The river kept moving. He rode through the castle gate at dusk. His hands were still. His face was the face he wore to councils and sieges. He had worn it a long time. He went to the stables first. He unsaddled his own horse with his own hands. He worked slowly and very deliberately. His hands were steady throughout. He told the chamberlain what had happened. An accident. A fall. Northern roads in early spring. These things happen. The news moved through the castle the way all news moves. Faster than the person carrying it, slower than grief. Seraphine was at the far end of the great hall. Her face, when it reached her. She went to her room. She walked without hurrying. She closed the door. Inside, she let herself be one thing. She had not done this since before the wars. By evening she was herself again. Cale sat outside her door from the 2nd hour to the 4th. He did not knock. He was 9 and he understood that some things must happen behind closed doors. He sat and he waited. She came out in the morning. She had decided to survive it. She had always been extraordinary at deciding to survive. She came to the war table. She stood opposite him. She said, "Was it an accident?" He looked up from the maps. He said, "Yes." She held his gaze. For a long time. She was measuring the distance between what he said and what lived behind his eyes. She said, "All right." She turned away. She did not look back. Neither of them spoke of it again. The kingdom needed them and they gave it everything. They always had. Seraphine in the hall, Aldric on the road. Grief does not stop governance. There is a kind of silence that has no sound. They moved through it every night. They slept in the same bed and were very far apart. Cale was 9 and he noticed. He saw his parents had stopped touching each other. He did not ask. He was his father's son. Lyra did not notice. She was 5. She had wildflowers and the grey cat and the garden. The distance between her parents was not something she had any capacity for. He burned the letter on a Tuesday evening, alone. He fed it to the fire and watched it go. It took 11 seconds. The fire took it completely. Nothing remained. He sat in the heat of it for a while. The way you sit when something is finally over. The door opened and she ran in. She had flowers from the garden. She said, "Papa," as though the word were the simplest thing that had ever been said. He lifted her. She was small and warm. She wrapped her arms around his neck. She smelled like the garden and like herself. She settled against his chest. He held her. The window behind them went slowly dark. She was his daughter. He held her still.